recorded in case you want to watch it again or you want to tell your friends about it. Let's start screen sharing again. Alrighty, we're going to start on weeds or wildflowers, an introduction to overlooked pollinator plants. And why I have this little graphic here is I just want to get you in the mindset of remember being a child and all the flowers were pretty to you before somebody told you they were weeds. So, and we kind of like developed these prejudices against some of the flowers. Now, what I won't be discussing today are invasive exotic weeds, and that's a whole other topic. And you know, those are things we don't want around because they cause problems for our ecosystem. What I'm talking about today is the flowers. I mean, most of these, literally I went around my own yard and up and down my road taking pictures for most of these. They're just out there and we just miss them as not being flowers we want in our landscape. And I'm just thinking maybe sometimes we need to rethink that. I am Lily Browning. I work for Hernando County Utilities, and the program I utilize in water conservation, which is the department where I work, is Florida Friendly Landscaping. For those of you in Pasco and Brevard and Duval and all those other counties, your Florida Friendly Landscaping person actually works for the County Extension Office. Frank Galdo works for the County Extension Office in Pasco. It just happens that in Hernando and Citrus, maybe a few other counties, we work for the water department, but we're all putting out the same message. And I partner very closely with County Extension. Really love the Master Gardeners. I used to work with County Extension for about 12 years, so I'm, you know, pretty close and have a good idea of what's going on there. And we put out the same message. So my program is Florida Friendly Landscaping, and these are the 9 principles. Below is my email. That really is, in these days of COVID, the best way to try and reach me. And I'll try to get an answer to you as soon as if I don't answer immediately, it could be that I don't know the answer right away and I'm trying to find it for you. But that is really the best way, that Lillyb, that's Lily with, well, people ask me if I have 2 L's and I tell them I have 3. And that really does, it blows their mind. But you know, I do have 3 L's in my name, but 2 in the middle. Lillyb at Hernando County, all spelled out, .us. And you'll see that email again. Oh, and this will be available, not only recorded, so that you can watch it this afternoon, from this afternoon on, at your convenience. It is also, you can email me at this email address, and I'll send you a PDF of it so you can look it over. But we have these same rules, as you want to, as we can put it. Thank you, Karen. For any kind of planting. So I'm just going to put these out there. You want to check how much space you have. We gardeners are so guilty of just wanting to get more and more and more flowers, and then we'll figure out where to put them. But you do want to check your available space, and this is very important. How much maintenance work are you wanting to do? If it were me, I would tell you very little, especially in this summer heat. But you know, decide what you want to do and do some research, and that's what you're here doing, researching the plants to get exactly what you want, and plan before you plant. That is one of the big things. And here are some of the benefits of using native wildflowers, or what some people might call weeds. They are low maintenance once they're established. Obviously, they're already out there growing on their own. And the things I'm going to talk about today basically are things that are probably already in your yard. And I just want you to have more of an appreciation of them instead of getting rid of them because they're not maybe on your plant palette of what you thought you should have. Maybe we just need to think outside of the box. And using these natives discourages the spread of invasive species because we're taking up that space with these native wildflowers. They do provide food and shelter for wildlife. They are beautiful. Native wildflowers get a bad rap saying, well, they just look like weeds and they're too small and they don't have that zing factor. And I think we can find out that, you know, that's not true. They've been around a long time. They are here adapting themselves. So they've been through weather and climate changes. I'm not going to get into, you know, any kind of politics or anything, but for whatever reason, I mean, I've been here 42 years. I know it's getting warmer. And these plants, they've been through, you know, millennia of different changes. So they're going to adapt one way or the other. They don't need supplemental irrigation. Obviously, they're already growing out there like weeds on their own. They have less pest and disease issues, and they're going to save you money. Save you money not only in leaving what you already have in your yard, but also once you get them established and if you propagate and spread them around, you won't be replacing them as often. But just remember, basic landscape principles still apply, design principles too. So you want the right plant in the right place. If you decide, oh, I really like this weed growing out here in the sun, and you try to stick it in the shade, you're not going to have much luck. You know, what we have to with these wildflowers / weeds is basically trying to encourage them to be where you want them to be, but remember, they're wild flowers. They're going to do what they want to do. So have some acceptance of that too. Don't overplant. That's hard. That's so hard for all of us. We want as many as possible, but we also don't want it to look like a weedy mess. So keep design in mind. And last week I went over a lot of design principles in my shabby chic landscape presentation. So you can go back on Facebook and watch that recording to get some of those design principles as well. But just remember, native does not equal no maintenance. Sometimes we tend to think that. I know, speaking of you Pasco County people, I was talking to Jim Mall, the Master Gardener Coordinator, and he was telling me about a seasonal resident he was talking to who wanted to get rid of his lawn and just plant wildflowers. But Jim had to explain to him, if you're not there, you know, to monitor that type of situation, weeds are, you know, going to grow in there too. And it's just going to look like a mess to your neighbors. It isn't going to be the beautiful meadow that you think it's going to be. So you have to take these things into consideration as well. How to plant, same rules. When we were playing in Master Gardener training last night, we were playing Florida Friendly Landscaping Bingo. And maybe we'll do that with the already established gardeners, Sean. It was kind of fun. One of the placeholders was plant high, and a gentleman asked me, what do you mean by that? So we were saying, just when you plant a plant, don't put it too deeply in the soil or you will not have very much success. And the same goes if you didn't go to a nursery to get some of these plants and you're just trying to transplant it, you still don't want to bury it halfway up the stem. You want to keep it up a little bit higher. That hole should be 2.5 times wider, but no deeper, than the root ball, than the top of the root ball. Okay, so let's, right plant, right place still applies here. And obviously in nature, these plants put themselves in the right place as far as they're concerned. It may not be as far as we're concerned. It may be, you know, in a place we don't want them. But as far as their needs, they put themselves in the right place where they have the right type of light conditions and soil conditions. Mature size, well, they're just going to grow how they grow, but we need to keep that into consideration in our yard. Give those plants room to grow. There's a reason I'm using this Spanish needle here to talk about that, but that'll be my first plant, and so we'll discuss it. And remember, again, plan first, then plant last. And this is a new saying of mine I just came up with a couple weeks ago, which is failing to plan is planting to fail. So keep that in mind. Failing to plan is planting to fail. All right. Now let's start talking about some of these plants. And a lot of these, you know, people will look at and be like, that's a weed. Well, that's kind of the point of this presentation. Those plants that you look at that will say, oh, that's a weed. And I'm going to agree with you here. This is a weed. This is a weed. And it, I have at the bottom there, it can be annoying. I have another word for it that I'm not going to say here of what it can be too, of where it can be a pain as well. I have it put itself in my front bed. And it is a pain to keep controlled. So if you don't want to be fighting it and pulling it and mowing it in the areas where you don't want it to be, this may not be an option for you. Also, it gets little stickers and little stick things at certain times of the year that get all over you, all over your dog, which would be more of a pain. So keep them out of areas where there is human or animal traffic. But my thing is I just can't take it away completely, because every time I go out there, there is a multitude of pollinators all over it. So I'm very forgiving of its aggressive nature and willing to try and contain it, even though that's pretty much a continual job, because of all the pollinators. There's bees, butterflies, beetles, ants, wasps, all over it. I like to take pictures. I'm an amateur photographer, nowhere near as good as Sean, but I like to do it for fun. And these are, you know, some photos, some of the millions of photos I've taken of my Spanish needle here, because I can just step out there and find something to take a picture of. There's going to be a butterfly out there. There's going to be a wasp or a bee or beetle or something on this. So this is a guaranteed pollinator attractor. It's just a pain to try and keep under control. It is not neat and tidy. Some freezes will help you keep it under control, but it's going to come back. They say it's edible, so maybe they're you know, something you can, it's edible to humans. And they say it's the third most reliable source of nectar for pollinators in the state. The information was from the Native Plant Society. I did not see where they wrote what 1 and 2 was as far as a reliable source of nectar. But yes, it's a pain, but it's so important for the pollinators that I am forgiving of its highly aggressive nature. There's another one. A friend just sent me, this is the picture she sent me, it wasn't blooming, so I found another picture where it was blooming, but she sent me this, said it's at my back steps into my house. What is it? And I like those kind of things that I can answer right away. Yes, I know what that is. Some people call this primrose. They call different plants primrose, so that gets confusing. Portulaca is like the main, one of the main names of it. It's probably part of its scientific name. Also Purslane or moss rose. Now there are cultivated varieties of this that are the non-natives, but you can walk around, I mean, on the side of the road or in the places that look like just the junkiest dirt in the world, and you will find this Portulaca growing there. So, you know, I've known somebody I was reading about, I didn't know them. I was reading yesterday that they had this growing in areas where they didn't want it. And so they just kept pulling it up and putting it into what they called their Portulaca patch and just sort of laying the runners down, you know, barely covering up the soil. And then they had this is their photo of, you know, where they wanted it to be. They call it a kiss me quick because those flowers are going to be done by midday. You're not going to see them there. It's a succulent, kind of, you know, very squishy in there. And like I said, I have seen it growing as a weed on the side of 19. And there have been legitimate reasons I've been walking down the side of 19, by the way, but anyway, but I've seen it there and in other, you know, kind of really not great soil. And so it should do very well. Makes a great ground cover. The native, to tell the native from the non-native, the native has the real cylindrical type of foliage, like it really is a succulent. The non-native has a flatter type of leaf, so you can tell them apart that way. But it does attract pollinators and grass skippers. And I think I told this story in Lily's Favorite 50 when I talked about this. It's just a family story. I wasn't even around at the time, but my oldest sister, when she was about 9, she discovered the name Portulaca. In the yard, we had some, and our last name was Pullum. So she, at that point, decided she was going to name her daughter Portulaca Pullum. The good thing for Amy and April is she changed her mind about that idea. Here's another really cool one. I would suggest getting this from a native nursery because it's not really very well transplantable, even if you have it different places in your yard and try to put it somewhere else. I have not had much luck transplanting them. But did you know, have you paid enough attention to know that what's on the bottom left there has those wonderful jingle bell flowers, usually beginning of June. Not every single one of them. They're, you know, like they're in a century plant family. So once it shoots that up, that really cool flower stalk there, it's done. After that, that's its life. But it has already also put out little, what they call pups, where it's, you know, put out new Adam's needle yucca plants, and it's going to go on. And why this one, this Yucca filamentosa, is called Adam's needle is, if you look on the bottom left there, you can see, well, they're sharp. So there's the needle, and that filaments that grow up through there, or the filamentosa, they consider that the thread. So that's why they call that Adam's needle. But it does provide food and cover for wildlife. You may say, well, that's kind of an unattractive plant, unless it's blooming like this. But it's also the larval host plant for the yucca giant skipper and the Kofakwi giant skipper. So 2 different butterflies. But the interesting thing about all yuccas is they only have one pollinator, and it is the yucca moth. And they have this incredibly symbiotic relationship. One cannot live without the other. The female lays her eggs in the ovary of the yucca flower, and then she packs that whole with a ball of pollen. So the pollen fertilizes the ovary, and the seeds begin to develop. But she has laid some eggs there, so the moth larvae eats the seeds. Now, how does that work out for the plant? The plant regulates how many seeds that larva is eating. And if that larva gets greedy and starts to eat all of the seeds in there, she'll throw that flower off. Say, well, see you, larva. You got too greedy and you're not going to be part of this relationship. So it is really an amazing thing that nature does there. Both of these are my yard where they put themselves. I didn't put these there, the spiderwort. The bottom one is coming up in the middle of two Yopon hollies. And I didn't have the heart to move it because this is so pretty. And the other one by the house there was actually nothing else growing there, so it looked fantastic. It looked great in when I began this working at home journey, like in April and May, even part through June. It's not doing much now, but that's okay. It's in the daylily family, so the flowers, the information says each flower stays open one day. Not my yard, they stay open one morning. By afternoon, they're all closed up. They're like, it's too hot, we're closing up. But it produces so many flowers that there's a lot to look at. And there are 4 native species in Florida. This one is probably the blue jacket spiderwort. That's the most common. They say you can throw this in your salad, that it is edible. It's really pretty, I think. Leaf sap, it's slimy, they say. I haven't actually tried to like pick them because I choose to pick them with my camera, not with my hands most of the time. But they say it's actually pretty slimy. They call it cow slobber plant as well. Yeah, but they also say you can use that like you would use an aloe plant, like on insect bites and things such as that. And it definitely also attracts pollinators. So if you're lucky enough for this beauty to pop up in your yard, I'd say let it be there. This one came along only this year. I really don't think I had it before. I'm on a half an acre in the back quarter. When I bought the house, what they were doing then was only putting sod around the house, like the front quarter. And the back quarter they left completely alone. They didn't do anything to it, and I'm all for that. I'm kind of distressed now that they're building new houses continuously around me, but that they are just flattening the entire half-acre lots are very distressing to me. But for the most part, I've left that back area natural as it is. I don't know, my neighbors particularly like that, but and I mow it maybe twice a year. So that's the area where this partridge pea is coming up this year. And it flowers in the late spring through fall. It does attract butterflies and long-tongued beetles. Those are the bees. Those are the only things that pollinate the partridge pea, are the long-tongued bees, bumblebees and things such as that. But there are other critters all over it because the nectar glands are down kind of on the stems, and they attract ants, flies, wasps, and other bees. And birds do eat the seeds. I tried to transplant one of these just, I think, about 2 weeks ago, because I'm creating a little wildlife nook right outside my window here. So I picked one and tried to transplant it. It didn't take, but it's hanging upside down dead on my fence in that area now, because I'm kind of hoping that the seeds will spread around and I'll get some next year. But the birds do eat the seeds, and it is the host plant to the gray hair streak and the cloudless sulfur. And I have personally seen the cloudless sulfurs all over these. So if you have these popping up, and they get to be, I don't know, 2 feet tall, look like little kind of scraggly bushes there, but they're a great pollinator plant to keep around. This, I don't really have much words for it, but I am willing to bet almost all of us have this. I I think native nurseries might offer it, but a lot of times it's not necessary because it's just out there. Probably a good part of my lawn has become this, and I did not put it out there. Nature did. But look at the three butterflies that this turkey tangle frog fruit, turkey tangle fog fruit, frog fruit, it has about 50 million names. Match headweed is another name of it. And you can see where that name would make sense. It's in some of my beds, so I let it be there, as well as all over the lawn. And I'm certainly not going to discourage it from being in the lawn, because to me, attracting these three butterflies, and every one of them are about the size of a quarter. They're really cute, tiny little butterflies. That is way more interesting than a sterile lawn that doesn't bring any kind of wildlife. And so this is just a really cool plant to have. Native nurseries probably do offer it, but if you don't have it, I bet you have a friend who does. You can maybe dig some up and start it in your yard without a problem. This is all over the Royal Highlands here, this purple love grass. There's a lot of it in that back portion of my natural area, and over the years I have dug it up, and on the bottom picture is mine. I'm just showing you, you know, how well it transplants. I have never, ever transplanted this without it taking. None of them have died. So it's really easily transplantable. It makes nice little round balls there. Now the top picture, somebody got a good picture of its inflorescence. And I'm really impressed that they did that, because that's hard to get a picture that close of you being able to see that inflorescence, especially with a camera. But that purple hue, usually you can see from a little bit more of a distance. So if you plant it in mass, which a lot of times it's on the roadsides in mass, this time of year, in September, mine should start getting that purple inflorescence soon. It really, really looks nice. Now the thing is, even though that looks kind of misty there, it really is on stalks that when they're done with the purple part, they'll just throw the stalks off and you will have them blowing around your yard and up to your door like little tumbleweeds. So that is something to think about as well. They do provide cover and nesting material for wildlife. It is the host plant for the Zebulon skipper butterfly, and it does attract other butterflies and birds. Here's the good thing.
This is kind of a free day. I know how it works.
Here, deer don't like it. So that might be something you're looking for. That deer may, you know, aren't all that attracted to it. And it does look great in mass, like I said, from a distance in the fall. If we take a ride up here in the Royal Highlands in another week or so and just look at the sides of the roads, hopefully you should see it. Just these like little areas of purple. Okay, here's another plant that gets a bad rap. It gets a bad rap because of its friends it hangs out with. It hangs in a bad crowd. It tends to hang out with ragweed. Ragweed is supposed to be pretty high very soon on the allergy index. But this goldenrod is not causing your allergies. And there are over about 100 species. So what species is this growing in the lot next to me? I do not care to try and figure it out if there are over 100 species, but some of the most common are flat top, tall, common, and giant. They have an interesting history, and that there may be more varieties out there that have kind of naturalized themselves because Thomas Edison bred different varieties to figure out ways to incorporate them in rubber production. And they are late season food for bees, butterflies, and other pollinating insects. And obviously how they grow there too, that makes great cover for the bunnies that are all around my yard. And, you know, I think it's just a really great plant to have around, and it gets a bad rap. There it is. It's telling you my pollen is heavy and sticky, which means it does not travel very far at all. It's not traveling up your nose. That's like the ragweed pollen is. And the insects do most of the pollinating of this plant. Beautiful, beautiful one, blazing star, or Liatris. I took this picture in my backyard yesterday of it growing there. It grows up on a pretty tall stalk and gets these purple flowers, you know, near the top. There are about 13 species in Florida. Blooms in the late summer, obviously. So I took this beautiful picture yesterday. Monarchs do nectar on them. And they do attract other butterflies, bees, and beneficial insects. And they just pop up in my natural area. Maybe when it's done, I'll try to collect some seeds so I can bring it up to that wildlife area that I'm wanting to plant as well. I'll get into how to do that near the end. Here, this guy. This guy could certainly be considered a weed, but a beautiful, beautiful weed. He's not aggressive like that Spanish needle. You plant one, it's not going to grow itself all over the place. But I do have plenty that pops up in my natural area, and they're really nice to incorporate in the more quote, quote, you know, civilized, landscaped area of your yards too. They make beautiful bushes. And they're deciduous, so they are going to lose their leaves. So if you're looking for evergreen, they're not what you would want. But then the flowers are bright pink to lavender in the spring. The berries are out right now. The birds do like them. Sometimes some of the birds will leave them until they're almost black, like there's no leaves or anything left, and the berries are still there, because they are edible, but they're not very sweet. So I think what the birds are waiting for is them to turn into beautyberry raisins, pretty much, so that they have a higher sugar content. They'll grow, if they grow out here in the Royal Highlands, where it's pretty dry and sandy, but I've also seen them in very moist habitats. They transplant, when I say they transplant easily, I'm very, very easily, and any time of year. I'll show you a picture in a second of how easily they transplant. They can get to be about 5 to 8 feet tall and about as wide. I think I have bigger ones than that. Now, people have in the past have used the leaves and rubbed on themselves to repel mosquitoes. I'll let Karen cover that, but that is one of the legends about this. And I heard that they would, there you are, Karen. I heard they would also put them like under the saddles of horses and things for the same type of reason. So, do you have anything to say about that, Karen?
I have not actually heard that. I will research into that.
Okay.
If anyone has any information that has been successful with that, I'd love to know.
Okay.
Have you heard any success with that? Or is it just?
No, I mean, I have a lot of these, and I don't have a lot of mosquitoes, but I'm also in a very dry area. So it could be, you know.
All right. Well, I'll check into it as you keep going.
Okay. The birds, like I said, do like this. Deer like the beautyberry as well. The berries are edible to humans, but the information I read said don't gorge on it. Not sure exactly why, but I don't know anyone who wants to gorge on these because they're not that good. They're edible, but when you do make jams and jellies with them, you're going to end up adding a lot of sugar. But the Hernando County Cannery a couple weeks ago just had a program. They just reopened, and they just had a program where they created beautyberry jelly, I believe. So it certainly can be done. Oh, here, let me show you this picture. How easily transplantable They are. This poor beautyberry, I pulled it up. I had transplanted it from the wild area of my yard. And then I decided, no, I want a fire bush here. So I pulled it up and kind of threw it to the side and planted my fire bush. And then I picked this up and I thought, I'll put you over here, back in the natural area. And actually this dirt here is about a decade old, unfortunately failed vegetable area. So I just kind of planted it there, pulled it out of the ground, planted it there, walked away, forgot about it. I didn't water it. I mean, we were getting a lot of rain. I didn't water it. And then I looked over one day and saw it pretty dead. So I'm like, oh, you know, well, that's unfortunate, but I have plenty of them. But just the other day I looked at it. When it comes to beautyberry, life finds a way. You can't really, you can't. It's really hard to fail with the American beautyberry. So I'll go out and I'll cut the dead parts off and have a very happy bush there. I have another story some of you have heard where I had a Royal Rumble wrestling match with a larger beautyberry. I had planted it too close to my house. So years later, when I decided to move it, it was bigger than me. It and I were engaged in a massive Royal Rumble, working with it to try and pull it out. And just this, nobody was around. And thank God I don't have any cameras outside. And I finally, after this big fight with it, I went and got an axe. Took an axe to its roots to move it, and then I put it over my shoulder as the victor in this great fight that we had, drug it to the backyard, planted it in the backyard, and it did this. Fine, I'll grow here. And it is still as happy as can be. So it's really hard to go wrong with American beautyberry. This one, I used to have some in my yard. I'm not sure if they're popping up yet, but this was just down the road that I took this picture. You can call it dotted horse mint. You can call it spotted bee balm. It's a fantastic, really cool plant. And where it's growing down the road, I am going to try and get some seeds because that lot is for sale. And I know, you know, what's going to happen is they're just going to clear cut everything. So I'm going to try and save some of these. It blooms in the late summer. It's blooming right now. If you happen to have an area where you have it, you'll see bunches of it. It gets to be about 3 to 4 feet tall. Freezes don't bother it much at all. And all of these, Julie McConnell, I was reading one of her blogs. She's a Bay County Horticulture Extension agent. She has recorded all of these insects on her dotted horse mint. Assassin bugs, ants, beetles, flies, dragonflies, spiders, wasps, honeybees, and moths. So, and it's really interesting. And if you get a close up, you can see the dots in there. And it's just a really cool plant to keep around. Here's another that grows kind of that people would consider a weed. I see my friend who took this top picture has joined us. It is the many flower beard tongue. Some of these names get so incredibly descriptive. It is kind of hairy and has a long petal-like projection that would be its tongue. It blooms in the spring and summer. It's almost endemic to Florida, which means endemic means it only grows here, but it's been recorded in a couple of places in Alabama and Georgia. So it also attracts pollinators, including hummingbirds, even though it's white. I will be able, after the class, I'll be able to see the chat and answer some of your chat questions. When I have the screen share up, can't really see the chat very well. And this plant is the host for the Baltimore checker spot. So this might come up on its own, and your lawnmower might just zoom it over thinking weed, 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 but I'm trying to get you to, you know, look at some of these a little more. Okay. Here's another one. Very, very common weed we're quite used to seeing. But it's a great flower actually to have around. It flowers in late winter to late spring. It does attract mainly bees, and that's a good thing, but also butterflies and hummingbirds. And it's in the mint family, so if you move your fingers around the stem, you'll feel that it's a square stem, the Lamiaceae family. And the reason it got its name is from those leaves there, because they're kind of shaped like the instrument, a lyre. And you can eat, this is when you can tell when it's not blooming because of its leaves, and it has that purple in the midrib that makes it stand out. So this is another thing where our lawnmowers are used to mowing this over, but maybe we need to reconsider having them in our yard. Okay. Another quote, quote, weed that pops up. It's a great plant to have around, Florida green eyes. I like its name too. If everyone could turn their mic off, it would be easier for you know, so there's not any other noises, background noises that might cause people to become distracted. So these Florida green eyes are endemic to Florida. What that means, as I just said, is they only grow in Florida, as far as we know. That is the case. And they can get to be about a foot tall. And they attract bees, wasps, flies, butterflies, and birds. Okay. And the Pricklypear. This one is, you may not even know that it grows that beautiful yellow flower there. I took that top picture. I think it looks like she's saying, hi, how you doing? Hello, hi. Grows this beautiful yellow flower. Now, you do have to be careful with these. I have a lot of these in my yard, but you do have to be careful. Normally it's fine, but last Christmas, you know, I had grandkids here and I had a 14-year-old boy here, and you know how they just run into everything. Oh, he kept finding every single one of my little prickly pears, and then came in with big scratches on his ankles and things like that. So if you have kids running around, you might want to consider not having these, but generally they are our only widespread cactus in the East. The songbirds like them, and some mammals, small mammals, seek shelter in the little kind of dens they create. Raccoons and gopher tortoises eat the pads and the fruits. Also, quail, wild turkey, doves, thrashers, woodpeckers, foxes, squirrels, and rabbit eat the fruit. The fruit is the little tiny piece at the top that the flower comes off of, and then the fruit kind of turns kind of red. They say it's edible for humans as well, but I would ask, you know, I would find out exactly how you could do that. Deer does browse on it in the spring. But as I said, because it is a cactus, and, you know, my grandson, you know, how 14-year-old boys are, he kept, everywhere he was running, he kept running into these. So just have them with care. And also, if you try to handle them, wear gloves, wear really good gloves, because it's not just the spines that you see that's the problem. They are covered with little hairs that can get into your skin and be very, very irritating. So be very careful with those. Here's another thing. You're going to look at me and you're going to say, what? That I know that's a weed. Now you're just trying to trick me now. This is just a weed. Well, first thing we need to say is this is not poison ivy. This is Virginia creeper. Poison ivy has 3 leaves. There we go. Virginia creeper generally, as it ages, has 5 leaves. It's not always spotted like this. That's not part of the plant. It's just the picture I took yesterday, and you know, it's getting late in the year, so they're kind of going down. But because of that, they're also going to start turning red, and maybe even some yellows in there. So it brings you some nice color. It does have deep purple berries in the late summer to early fall, which is now. And the birds absolutely rely on that for survival, but don't eat them yourselves. They are poisonous to humans. Woodpeckers, thrushes, deer, squirrels, and other animals eat the berries. It also provides cover in the trees for small birds, mammals, lizards, things such as that. It has these little sticky tendrils, which is how it grows, like any vine. So if you try to pull it up, you'll get the plant up, but the tendrils are going to remain where they are. And it brings you nice fall color. So we can look at this and say, oh, it's just a weedy vine. But it also does provide a lot of good things for the wildlife. And it's just Virginia creeper. Up here is what poison ivy looks like. I have family members who absolutely swear to this day that it's poison ivy. And just like the goldenrod, which hangs in a bad crowd, you know, poison ivy might use the Virginia creeper to crawl up on. So you do have to be careful, especially if you're sensitive to those. Here's another vine, wild grapevine. It's not as common up here in the sandy Royal Highlands. If you step outside in the more eastern areas, you're just going to see it without even trying. And it can get mixed in with invasive exotic vines such as skunk vine or air potato as well. But this is our native wild grapevine. It is a muscadine grape. The wild ones are not the hybridized ones that they try to grow and, you know, make wines and things with. Another name for the muscadine Florida grape is a scuppernong, which is way more fun to say. It's a scuppernong vine. It is the favorite fruit of the white-tailed deer. So if you're trying to attract deer, they love this. Also black bears, wild turkey, ruffed grouse, raccoons, skunks, squirrels, and possums. They like the berries. Also, the birds you're going to get are cardinals, mockingbirds, robins, and cedar waxwings. They eat the berries, and they are primarily responsible for the spread thereof of this grapevine because they go further than the other mammals, than the mammals do. Now, I always thought that I never have noticed any grapes in the wild. I figured the animals got them first, is why I never really see grapes in the wild. Well, yesterday in my research, I learned probably that reason is the majority of the vines are male that we see. So they're not fruiting. This is a dioecious plant. Dioecious means 2 houses, meaning you need male and female plants for reproduction to occur. So, you know, the grape growers who grow it for wine and stuff, they make sure that they have the male and female. But that could be why you've never really seen any grapes on them. And people use them for crafts, and it's just a good thing to have around. It's not, this vine is not very aggressive either. Now this vine, you're going to tell me, I'm done, I'm out of here. Goodbye. And I'm not encouraging you necessarily to grow it on purpose. They've healed now, but I've had some scratches here. Look like I got in a fight with a kitten. They also call this cat's claw because of this vine. Most of us also have scratches around our ankles because of this vine getting caught up in it. And we are not feeling, you know, any love towards this vine. And the top picture is just, I'm showing you, yeah, I suffer from it too. That's my Yopon holly, and it's saying, hi, I'm all up in here. What you gonna do? There are different varieties of this greenbrier. I guess what I'm just want you to not feel that bad that it's there. I'm not encouraging you to propagate it and have it on purpose. But if it's around, you don't have to feel that bad about it, because it does provide wildlife food and protective cover. It provides food for the ruffed grouse bird, the deer, and the black bear. So it has a purpose. I'm not saying have it around because it's not a very landscape friendly plant, but maybe don't feel that bad when it is around. And then, you know, try to get rid of it as you can, but don't go crazy. Just get it out of your way, basically. And here's another one that you could walk right by this and not even see it. But if you did pay attention, it's just such a beautiful, fine type of flower, the Star Rush white top. It's in the sedge family. And the white parts that you see are actually bracts, kind of like poinsettias, and it's not really the flower there in the top, and then has the green tips. Where the flower is in the middle, but each of those clusters, or each of those spikes have many small flowers, and they must be microscopic type of flowers. So it is a really interesting plant. It is pollinated by insects. It does prefer wet areas. Sometimes will grow right in the water. So it might be, you know, great for a rain garden, great for a pond, something like that. But it is something where, again, your lawnmower is just going to say, I'm going to mow it over, but we need to maybe take a second look at it. This is growing in my yard. It is just such a fascinating plant. See the bottom right, it doesn't look quite as fascinating as when you really, really look at these flowers. And they're just amazing. And I had to ask my friend Rita, and she had to look it up, had to do some research to figure out what this was. And I've got it all over my back area. It's a Dogtongue wild buckwheat. And look at this critter on it. This scarab beetle really enjoys it. Look at him in the bottom left. He's just crawling up there to get some more. It blooms in the late summer and fall. It's blooming right now. It has whorled leaves, like you might have 6 inches and then 3 or 4 leaves all in a row together, and then another 6 inches and the leaves start again. Grows in sandhills, scrub, and dry pine lands, likes full sun. They're about 2 feet tall. So if you were able to get some and plant several of them together, it would look really, really good. Not a huge butterfly attractor. Butterflies will come, but lots of other pollinators, including, I found this scarab beetle, and beetles are pollinators as well. He's really enjoying it. Now, this is kind of what this is part of my backyard that I've left natural, and that includes leaving the soft palmetto. And some people are so against leaving this native natural plant there, even the native natural Floridians, because native Floridians have in their head that rattlesnakes are in there. They could be, any kind of snake could be under any kind of shrub or covering like that. If you have a black snake or a non-venomous snake, it's most likely then they're taking up the niche, so you don't have a poisonous snake around. But it provides cover for deer. The berries have medicinal uses, mostly for men's health. You'd have to extract it and, you know, through a lab and everything. The bees collect the nectar from the flowers for honey. Gets to be about 4 feet tall and at least 20 feet wide if you let it go. I had 2 different visitors years ago, 2 sisters in my family that came at different times, and both of them made the assumption that these were just baby palms. They didn't realize that's as tall as they're going to get, and they're just going to keep spreading wide. But they are the habitat for the crested caracara, the Florida burrowing owl, the sandhill crane. Didn't know if you realize that. Scrub jays, which are endangered, sand skinks, and the Florida mouse. I've seen just there's a whole world going on in there of birds and other type of animals. So again, I would not want to get rid of it. Now, I got rid of a few of them that were closer to my little fenced in area in the back where my little tiny doglets run, because an arborist told me he could see signs that coyotes also will maybe want to hide in there. So I didn't want them up close to the fence. I didn't get rid of all of them for that reason, but you know, near the fence, I didn't get rid of them because they keep coming back, but we keep them pruned down, I should say. And the fruits and the shoots are eaten by black bears and deer. That's why when you're in state-run areas like Chinsegut Conservation Center, you're not allowed to take the berries because they're for the black bears to eat. This is Lori's picture. I think she's still watching with us. She sent this to me for one of the virtual plant clinics, wanting to make sure this was an okay tree that maybe somebody gave her and she replanted or she found from somewhere else. We determined, yes, it's a great tree. It's a native common persimmon. And I have them growing all over out here too. And they're kind of turning reddish now. Maybe Lori's is now too in the fall. It has some nice fall color. It can be used for fruit for wildlife, but that fruit, if it starts growing, persimmons, just like any fruit in your yard, can become messy. Think of crab apples from up north. You know, you can maybe have that kind of slimy mess. So be careful where you put it. Though it's very urban tolerant, they need to start planting these, you know, in more urban areas because they do quite well as like a city tree. You can use it as a specimen tree in your yard. Like I said, it'll turn kind of red and yellow and purple. And I did not realize that once it gets growing very well and as an adult, the wood is very, very hard and dark, and they use it for golf clubs. So there's just something else new there. Here's one of our favorites. In there, in that tree, is the resurrection fern. If it's dry, you may not even see it there because it dries up completely brown, and if you did pay attention to it, you would think it was dead. You would swear it was dead. And that's why it has its name, resurrection fern. It just uses the tree as shelter or as structure. It can lose up to 95% of its water content and survive. Do you know how much we can lose and survive? 15%. So this is one of those amazing things in nature. And when it starts drying out, it makes sure its bottom part is up, and that helps it with its revival later. But it has chemicals called dihydrins, which almost act as a lubricant that stop it from totally dying out. It spreads by spores like any other fern. It has its extracts have medicinal uses as well, because people really wanted to study it and figure, whoa, this thing looks dead and it doesn't die. So they use it as a diuretic, obviously. It also has uses for cardiac medicine and infections, and it's used by insects, lizards, snakes, and also common wood warblers in the trees. And what happens is they can look as dead as can be, and then when they get a good rain on them, they'll look exactly like they do in the tree here. That's why they're called the resurrection fern. Here's another that gets a bad rap. You may not think of it really as a plant. If you're new here, it does not by any means harm a tree. Spanish moss is an air plant. That should say chiggers. I don't know why it says triggers. That's another legend among the natives, is that all the Spanish moss is full of chiggers or red bugs. If it's on the ground, it probably is. Anything that's kind of laying on the ground is going to get the chiggers in them. There's not that much of a chigger population in them when they're hanging on the tree. I still, wouldn't like lay on them or anything. But insects and invertebrates hide and breed in the Spanish moss. This is the coolest thing I learned yesterday, because I did not know this at all, that zebra longwings roost in it at night. That is worth keeping it around just for that. But also Parula warblers, Baltimore orioles, and many other birds use the Spanish moss for nests. It's not really a moss, it's just its name. It's in the bromeliad family. And years ago, like the 30s through the 50s, now before the 30s, the 1800s through the 50s, they used it for chairs, for stuffing chairs, and the Model T. They used Spanish moss for the seats in the Model T cars, and several things as that. And there used to be, like, I think they said 35 plants or factories in Florida that processed it. But they all closed in the 50s because they found, more synthetic material. It is not killing your tree. It will utilize more light to grow more if your tree is already suffering from something else. It gets framed for a job it did not do. So that's the case there. The same with this ball moss. It has little tendrils like the Virginia creeper to hold itself on the tree, but it's not sucking anything out of your tree. It again is an epiphyte and a bromeliad. And the lighter a tree or a bush, the more light is allowed in, because that tree or bush may be declining anyway, the more of these get to grow on it, but they're not causing the problem. And here's another. This is a very interesting phenomenon, this lichen. And people bring these into the extension office because they think it's an algae or something harming their tree. And in fact, it is an algae. Actually, it's a combination of a fungus and an algae growing together in a mutually beneficial relationship. It's the only thing like it on Earth, this lichen, where the fungus obtains water and minerals from the air, and the material it is growing on provides structure and protection for the algae. And the algae provides carbohydrates and vitamins for the fungus. So it all kind of works together. You can have flat lichen, leafy, or hair-like. It'll grow on trees, sure, but also rocks, soil, fence posts. So that tells you it's not using the tree to live on, just really for structure. And again, if the tree or the shrub is declining because of age or because of whatever, it's just, whatever happened to it, more of this will grow on it, but it's not causing the trouble. And you can find it in white or gray. They say red, we would consider it more pink, green, yellow, or black. If you have the pink lichen, that is a indicator of good air quality. It won't grow where there's pollution in the air. So that's good news for you there. And usually, like moss, it's usually found on the north side of the tree. So here are some tips for a wildflower friendly garden. Use as little pesticides as possible. None, I would say, in your wildflower garden. Plant diversity is the key for everything. We want diversity in different types of plants, different heights, different sizes. That's going to bring the wildlife around. Manage your pets. You don't want to attract a different wildlife if your pets are going to go out and hunt them. So, be very careful about that. Be careful with the invasive exotic plants. Know the difference between a native plant, a Florida-friendly plant, and an invasive exotic plant. Providing a water source is a good idea. I'll let Karen talk about how to do that responsibly in just a minute. You can leave some brush piles and snags if you're in an area that allows that. What is a snag? It's an old dead tree. If you have a large piece of property where it's not going to fall on anything like a building or anything, then leave it there while just tons of wildlife can live in that old dead tree. You can bring in bird feeders, pollinator hotels to these areas, but remember to embrace the circle of life. So many people I know who enjoy butterflies and things, they get, understandably so, but they get very, very, very upset, like if a predator of their preferred butterfly comes around. Well, that's, you know, it's all part of the circle of life, and we're going to have that outside. And also, maybe we enjoy our squirrels or our little mammals around there, and the hawks do too. Well, again, that is all part of letting, you know, wildlife occur outside in our yard. If you're wondering how you can bring some of these to your home, well, if they're already there, that's kind of what I'm trying to encourage you to do. Just leave them, let them be. You can get them from a native nursery or a Florida-friendly nursery, and I have some resources in another slide for that. I must encourage you, do not remove wildflowers or seeds from public areas. You will be fined for that. And don't go on anyone's property without their permission. But also where I have investigate your gift seeds or plants. What does that mean? That means your neighbor came over and gave you a plant and says, this just grows anywhere and I didn't even plant it. You might want to then take a picture and send it to me, or take it to the county extension office and make sure it's either native or Florida friendly and it's not an invasive exotic. Those are kind of danger words, you know, that it grows everywhere and I didn't even plant it. So be real careful with that. And if you have permission on a personal property to collect some seeds, you may do that, and there are various ways. I just talked to Rita this morning. She says don't collect them when they're wet. If you don't have a choice, that's when you want to dry them out on paper towels. One of her friends used to put them in jars and in the refrigerator, but she doesn't do that. She just puts them in open jars and doesn't seal them up, doesn't refrigerate them. When she gives them out, she puts them in paper envelopes. And it's probably a good idea to use them soon. And when you go to plant them, you're not want to, how are they going to propagate in nature? The wind's going to just blow it around, right? And it's going to grow. So you could do that, just scatter it like chicken seed, if it's not a really windy day, if you want it to grow where you want it. Or if you want to secure it, just slightly, tiny little bit of soil over the top of it. And Rita, who I spoke to this morning, and she's a native plant expert, she's having a class next Tuesday. Here's all the information, or you can go to the county extension Facebook page, Hernando Extension, and also get these links. She's going to talk next Tuesday on 20 easy to grow wildflowers. And I asked her if, you know, she's going to talk about propagating the cuttings. But I asked her if she's going to talk about seeds, and she said it wasn't in her plan, but probably because she doesn't know what comes out of her mouth. So hopefully she'll cover all of that. She is a great resource, so I really encourage. And it also will be recorded, so you can catch it again. And next week, I'm going to have a class like I do every Wednesday. So you're at the nursery, how to shop for plants. So that should be rather interesting as well. The tips that you should look for in purchasing good plants. Again, here is my email at the bottom. And let me show you these resources. My email again, and some really good resources to get you started learning about the wildflowers and the native plants here. And I'm going to let Karen do her little spiel about mosquito control. Then I will look at the chat.
All right. Well, I did look a little bit into that folklore, and I'll never question folklore. They always kind of have something back there, but it's shown to help with mosquitoes just as DEET, and as well as ticks and fire ants as well. So it was quite interesting. So that American beautyberry is quite a plant for a lot of different things. I'll just go over really quick. We're hitting a really wet season this year here in mosquito control. The hurricane season is, although we've avoided the hurricanes, we are getting quite a bit of rain. So we're getting a lot of service calls, a lot of people having a lot of mosquitoes. The first thing we're asking is to please just go out and dump and drain any standing water that you may have in pots and buckets, because that's majority of still what's causing the discomfort in our residents. Our guys are out there, they're doing their best to treat all these standing water areas. Of course, they don't just send the truck, because that truck is only going to affect that flying mosquito that is out there at night. Once they knock that down, the ones that are still ready to hatch and hatching the next day are going to come back out. So it is a continuing process. What our guys do, will go out and they'll treat the actual water with a larvicide to prevent the next hatchings from coming out of the water. And sometimes you do still need the truck to knock down the ones that are already flying, but it doesn't really cure the solution if it's not really a cure or a solution if they're still hatching by the minutes in those low-lying standing waters. So if you are feeling that you're having a lot of just, mosquitoes in your area, please give us a call. That's our best defense, to get out there and make sure that we're doing the treatments needed. Our guys are doing the regular spots, but there are more spots right now that need to have some attention to. Well, all in all, it's been a very slow season for mosquitoes up until these last couple weeks. We're really getting quite a bit of water. We have lots of techniques that we use in the county to help prevent and to monitor. We have our chickens that we use to monitor for diseases that the mosquitoes carry, such as West Nile and Triple E. Those are tested weekly. Those are used to determine whether or not there is anything in our vicinity, and if there is, we get right out there and get right on it and get rid of those mosquitoes out there. We also have fish, which are really, really good during times like this. If you have a retention area and it sits with water the majority of the time, and right now it's even bigger, we want to stock that with fish. That'll eat that larvae. It'll prevent it from hatching into a flying adult. So if you're in need of any of those fish, give me a call here in the office. I'll give you our number. It's 352-540-6552. And I can even put it in the chat if needed. Give me a call. We'll get the guys to come out and deliver the fish for you. And they're phenomenal with taking care of the larvae in this water. We also can go out, we can larvicide, we could do spray treatments, individual treatments. It doesn't necessarily need the nighttime truck. That's not the only real solution. So please give us a call. You can also go on our website, which is hernandocounty.us/mosquito. You could put in a work order yourself. If not, I'll be more than happy to do it for you. Our hours here are 7 to 3:30. So I'm here throughout that time, and I'll be more than happy to get that work order. Our guys are really quick. If you're calling earlier in the day, they're usually out there same day or next day. So it's not like you'll be sitting waiting. We try to get right on it when those mosquitoes are at, we want to eliminate them before they keep breeding. As far as your wildflowers and gardenings, the best thing to do is to make sure that if you have containers of water, that if you're recycling your rainwater, which is always a good thing, that you're not letting it sit there for a really long time. At this time of year, every 3 or 4 days, you want to make sure that water is being reused. If you have rain barrels, make sure your screens are up on top so that the mosquitoes aren't able to get in there and lay any eggs inside the barrels. As long as your screen is on there, and ours come with really good screens, nice and tight, so they're not really a mosquito problem with the rain barrels. But if your screen has come off, just make sure you replace that, because that can become a pretty big. If you're using your bird baths, make sure you scrub them a little bit with a brush. The eggs will sit on the edge as the water fills up. They'll hatch in there. If you have bromeliads, they're beautiful plants. However, they are really good mosquito hiding spots. So that pocket of water that sits in that flower comes out of, you can flush it with a garden hose a couple times a week, or there's even granules they sell in the box stores. You can sprinkle the granule in there, and that'll just prevent them from breeding. Those are a really popular breeding spot. When our guys go out, if they're bromeliads, it's almost guaranteed that that's where they're coming from.
So with your bird bath, you want to change that water every 4 to 5 days and brush it, like you said. And if you have to have bromeliads, you want to take your hose and shoot the old water out and the new water in every 4 or 5 days as well.
Yeah. If it's in a pot, you can even dump it out, tip it a little and get that water out of there. That's really that's a good hiding place. And like I said, any problems, if you're in our county, please just reach out to us. We have our basic areas, our retention areas, our drainage areas that our guys do regularly and maintain regularly. But when the water levels are higher, it kind of finds new spots that need additional treatment. There is no charge. Give us a call. Our guys will come out. They will inspect your property. They'll do a walk around, because the only way to really solve the problem is to find where the problem's coming from. So they'll do a quick walk around. They'll look for that water source. And sometimes it's not in a pretty, it's not always in an obvious place. It can be a tree hole. It can be at a neighbor's yard. It may not even be in your yard, but they know what they're looking for. And they'll do a walk around. Once they find it, they'll let you know if it's a tarp that just collected a puddle of water. And it's amazing how many mosquitoes can breed in that little bit of water. So they'll let you know if it's a problem area, just to monitor, or to, make sure you check that spot next time, because it might be, a reoccurring nook or cranny. And then they'll do a spray or treatment or whatever needs to be done.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you.
The chat, a few questions here. Debbie is asking about propagating beautyberry by cuttings. I've never done it that way. She says she hasn't had much luck even using the hormone and stuff. I've only ever just taken them out of the ground and replanted them. So I haven't tried to do it by cuttings, but I bet you that is something Rita's going to cover next Tuesday in her class about wildflowers, because she said she would be talking about propagating via cuttings. It might be a time of a year thing with the beautyberry as well. I don't know if any master gardeners are on here and had any have ever tried that, or what their secrets were, but definitely next Tuesday, if you can't make that time, it'll be recorded, and watch Rita's presentation there. Yeah, the pricklypear does have very superfine prickly hairs. My husband once, when we were new out here, thought he would be nice and bring me the yellow flower, and his hands suffered for it for a good week. So yeah, be really, really careful. How aggressive is the partridge pea? I can't really say because it's new in my yard. So, I mean, I have like 5 little bushes, if you want to call it, of that. but nothing compared to the Spanish needle. Nothing is as aggressive as the Spanish needle. And the same with the bee balm. I don't think it's going to be very aggressive. I've seen it, grow in good out there in the woods where I'm afraid they're going to clear cut it. They might be in groups of maybe 3 feet wide together there. Purple lovegrass. No, it is not the same as muley grass. It's smaller than muley grass, even though they both are kind of purple. Muley grass is going to get to be bigger, more of a shrub type size. Purple lovegrass is only going to stay about 9 inches tall, somewhere around there. How tall does the blazing star get? About 1 foot, maybe 2 feet tall. I don't know about purslane being safe for human consumption, so I'm not going to answer that because I could get in trouble there. So you're going to have to, look. We might get Rita to do another edible landscape program soon. If you look on my Facebook page, I have included a link where she gave one a few years ago that you can watch as well. I'm not sure if goldenrod will spread underground. I know it spreads pretty well where it is in that undeveloped lot next to me. Hope that lot stays that way. It looks like it's probably growing underground, but I can't say for sure. Yeah, yes, and I'm sorry, for Kathy Hill, yes, resurrection fern could be growing on your palm trunk as well. Anything it finds, and that has those nice pockets, that hold the soil in there. It's a great place for it to grow. Yes, and Ann says bats also use Spanish moss for roosting. That is true. Yeah, ticks can populate Spanish moss. Just don't use it for anything without, they use it for crafts and things. Look up how to do that. I know a lot of people microwave them first, or maybe put them out in the sun for quite a while to make sure there's just not any kind of critters in there that you don't want to be in there. Does milkweed grow here? Yes, it does. I talk about milkweed quite a bit in other classes. You want to try and get a native milkweed. There are 3 commercially available varieties. You can have the tropical milkweed, which is what's available in the store, but be careful because it could have been treated with a systemic pesticide, so find that out first. And you might just end up killing all your butterflies, and so you don't want that to happen. But also, depending on where you live, so here in Central Florida and in North Florida, you have the tropical milkweed. We want you to cut it down from November through April so that you're not confusing the monarchs and having them stay here longer than they should, where they can freeze. And not only that, people, they rear them and things all through the winter and let them out on a nice sunny warm day, but there's nothing blooming for them to nectar on. We need to consider all of these options. And I also discussed some other problems in some of my other classes if you want to go back and see those as well. But it is best to get the native varieties, like I said, which 3 are commercially available at native plant nurseries, because they go by the way themselves and they don't encourage the monarchs to stay here when they shouldn't. Karen, can you put in your email and your phone number, please, on the chat? Oh, somebody saw.
Sorry, the email I have in there, I'll put my phone number down.
Okay, you already put it there.
Yeah, hold on.
All righty. Yes, use tongs if you're going to do anything with Pricklypear. Oh, you did already. Okay. All right. Well, I think we are. You don't need to contact Rita to listen to the seminar. She's doing it through the county extension office. And if you email me and ask for a PDF of this, you'll have that information with all of the links and everything. Thank you all very much. I know we're running over time here. So thank you for joining us. And I hope to see you again next week. Thank you and have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye, Sean. Bye, Karen.